Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Hong Kong's number 2, John Lee, declares he's eyeing for the city's top job. There's mounting anger in Shanghai as COVID infections reach a new high. And in Hong Kong, the daily COVID caseload falls to its lowest level in more than 7 weeks. John Lee has resigned as Chief Secretary, taking the first step in his bid to become Chief Executive. Once Beijing approves his resignation, he'll launch his campaign to succeed Carrie Lam, who has decided against a second term for family reasons. Joanna Ho reports.
It's too early to tell whether John Lee will be the lone candidate for the city's top job. But one thing is for sure, he's the first to announce his candidacy.
This afternoon, I have tendered to the Chief Executive my resignation from the post of the Chief Secretary for Administration of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and requested her to seek the approval of my resignation by the Central People's Government under Article 48(5) of the Basic Law. I indicate in the letter the reason for my resignation is that if my resignation is approved by the Central People's Government, I shall plan to prepare to stand for the upcoming Chief Executive election.
Lee expressed his gratitude to Chief Executive Carrie Lam, principal officials, as well as the people of Hong Kong.
Having been in the government for over 40 years, to serve the people of Hong Kong is a glory. I would also like to make use of this opportunity to thank all members of the civil service with whom we have worked together over the long years. I shall now begin my leave. If the Central People's Government approves my resignation, I shall inform you of my next move in details. Thank you.
John Lee did not take any media questions and left the auditorium after his 5-minute speech in Cantonese and English. If the city's number 2 official receives Beijing's blessing, he could become the first former policeman to run for the leadership post. Lee joined the force as an inspector in 1977, rising to chief superintendent 20 years later. But his political career only began in 2012, when he was named Under-Secretary for Security while serving as Deputy Police Commissioner. He took over the Security Bureau 5 years later and was the government's point man in rolling out the controversial national security law in 2020. His hardline stance seemed to have earned the recognition of Beijing, as he was appointed Chief Secretary the following year. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
Many political and business heavyweights have come out in support of John Lee. Pro-Beijing figures Henry Tang and Maria Tam said Lee's firm political stance makes him a suitable candidate. Financial Secretary Paul Chan took to social media to wish his former colleague all the best. Victor Lee, who has C.K. Hutchison, said he hopes Lee will improve the quality of life for Hong Kongers. Moderate lawmaker Teck Chi-yuen, meanwhile, expressed the hope that there'll be more candidates in the chief executive election. Constitutional Affairs Chief Eric Tsang said the election will take place even if there's only one candidate. Discontent is reaching boiling point in Shanghai, where the authorities were chastised for their poor COVID response. Infections in the financial hub have reached a new high for the 5th straight day. Sarah Wong reports.
COVID cases jumped to a new high in Shanghai, with the Pudong New area bearing the brunt of the Omicron onslaught. Asymptomatic cases soared above 16,700 yesterday, while 311 infected people had symptoms. The caseload in the outbreak has shot past 90,000. More than 38,000 medics were rushed to the mainland's financial hub as a new round of mass testing began. Frustrated residents in a city of 26 million turned to social media to vent their anger. They complained about the difficulty in getting food and vegetable deliveries despite government promises. Outbound parcels were said to be grounded. Those whose quarantined relatives suffer from cancer and other severe diseases went online to plead for help. Others lambasted the authorities for failing to care for residents under lockdown. The underprivileged and the elderly were the biggest victims, and some were said to have starved at home for days. Following a backlash over the separation of infected children from their parents, the authorities decided to allow special needs children with COVID remain with their families. The mainland, including Shanghai, had over 19,000 asymptomatic cases yesterday and 1,400 symptomatic ones. Jilin province in the northeast added nearly 3,000 infections. Since March, China's tally has grown to more than 170,000 cases across 29 provinces. Authorities are insisting on sticking to the dynamic zero policy, despite mounting questions over its efficiency and sustainability. Sarah Wong, HKIBC.
In Hong Kong, new COVID cases have dropped to a 50-day low. Health authorities reported 2,777 infections, including 7 imported cases. However, the death rate rose slightly to 0.71% after another 84 people died from COVID in the past 24 hours and 27 more earlier. The tally so far in the 5th wave now stands at 8,247. 3 of those who died were under 65 years old. They also suffered from chronic diseases, including brainstem damage, kidney failure, and lung cancer. The government says it can cope if a large number of people are found to be COVID positive when they test themselves over 3 days later this week. Rapid test kits are included in packages, which the government hopes to deliver to all households by the end of the day. Joanna Ho reports.
Acting Home Affairs Secretary Jack Chan expressed confidence that the government can distribute its anti-COVID packs to all 2.7 million households today. This will enable people to participate in the voluntary 3-day mass rapid antigen test screening starting on Friday. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said, even if a large number of people test positive in the exercise, the government has enough places in its community isolation facilities, or CIF.
We have 20,000 beds. Maybe we don't even need to use the beds. We will allocate by rooms. In the 6 sites built with the support of the central government, we still have a certain number of CIF hotels. We have a block of public rental housing, and we have Penny's Bay. And we have 6 or 7 holding centers, which could also serve the purpose of a CIF for elderly people.
Those found to be positive could also self-isolate at home if their living conditions are suitable. Lam assured that the government can deliver 60,000 resource kits to infected households at the peak of any outbreak. Center for Health Protection Controller Edwin Cho said the government can process 60,000 reported cases per hour on the RAT Result Self-Declaration platform. Lam noted that the pandemic situation is still worrying because the effective reproductive number, which reflects the number of people who could be infected by a virus host, rose to 0.61 last Tuesday. Joanna Ho, HKIBC.
Overseas, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has continued to press for tough measures against Russia, which has been accused of war crimes. This comes as the United States sends more weapons to Ukraine, while the European Union looks to ban Russian coal. Sarah Wong reports.
The devastation in Borodyanka is plain to see after Russian forces left the small town near the Ukrainian capital Kyiv. This apartment complex was left in ruins, and the personal items of its occupants were scattered on the ground. Dmitry Yevtushkov joined others to scour the debris for their belongings, but the only thing the 25-year-old could salvage was a photo album from his mother. Russia's war against Ukraine has dragged into its 7th week, with Moscow now focusing on the Donbas region in the east. But the destruction in previously occupied places prompted Ukraine's president to urge the United Nations Security Council to strip Russia of its permanent seat. Volodymyr Zelensky claimed that civilians in the town of Bucha had been deliberately shot in the streets, crushed by tanks, and thrown into wells. Moscow continued to deny murdering civilians and accused Kyiv of sabotaging peace negotiations.
I deeply regret the divisions that have prevented the Security Council from acting not only on Ukraine, but on other threats to peace and security around the world. I urge the Council to do everything in its power to end the war.
The United States and the European Union are set to impose fresh sanctions on Russia. Brussels is mulling a ban on Russian coal imports, but remains hesitant in barring oil and gas. The U.S. went a step further by targeting Sberbank, Russia's largest lender, and President Vladimir Putin's family. Washington is also sending Ukraine $100 million worth of Javelin anti-tank missile systems, which the Americans used extensively in Afghanistan and Iraq. Sarah Wong, HKIBC.
Activity in the mainland's services sector plunged last month at its fastest pace in 2 years, according to a private survey. The Caixin Services Purchasing Managers Index dropped to 42, down 8 points from February. COVID outbreaks lessened demand for services, with the catering, hotel, and transport sectors hit the hardest. Optimism is at a 19-month low over concerns about COVID and the economic impact of the conflict in Ukraine. The Hang Seng Index headed south, losing almost 2% as the Hong Kong stock market reopened after yesterday's holiday. Trading was overshadowed by the grim news from the north, a new COVID record in Shanghai, and a steep contraction in the services sector. Tech stocks again influenced market direction, with Meituan losing 3.7%, as the sector gave up a good portion of its gains on Monday. Local investors are waiting for the release of the minutes of the U.S. Federal Reserve's latest meeting for fresh clues on market trends. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng ended the day down by 421 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent lost $9, Alibaba down $6.10, while CNOOC was up 58 cents. JD.com shed $11.80, while the tracker fund lost 44 cents. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro's at 8.56, pound sterling 10.25, and the Australian dollar at 5.93. Finally, in Europe, the London FTSE is currently down 34 points. On to the weather now. Staying fine and dry tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 20 and 28 degrees. Similar conditions for the rest of the week. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Wednesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.